I'm a little claustrophobic, but this isn't so bad. Like, it's enough space and light. What did you do today? Oh, you know, just fell off a big tower in Prague. How'd that work out? Oh, not so good.
Prague, the capital city of the Czech Republic, is as beautiful as it is historic. With its gorgeous baroque, rococo, classical, and gothic architecture, Prague inspired many creatives, including Mozart, Kafka, and the Czech composer Antonín Dvořák. With all this beauty, it's no wonder that in recent years, tourism has exploded in Prague, as my friend Aneta from Fujifilm Europe explained.
Actually, the season for tourists it's none. It's all year round. So if you come here any time during the year, you can always see a lot of tourists.
Wow. I find that hard to believe because it gets so cold here in the winter.
It is. Yeah.
And people still visit.
Yes, because Prague is beautiful also with when it's covered by snow. So they come here also to take the pictures.
But the other thing about the Czech Republic, it attracts a lot of photographers now. I think people say that it's one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. But the Czech Republic has this long history and legacy in photography. And you're going to take us to this very special location, right?
Yes. In the city center, there is this beautiful and huge store focused on photography. It's called Skoda, where there is like 4 levels. So we will see.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm looking forward to it.
Skoda is a camera store, yes, but it's much more than that. It also has in-house processing, printing, framing, photo studios, galleries, educational programs, and even its own mini museum. I was lucky enough to get a tour with Mr. Milan Skoda himself and his son, Martin Skoda.
150 years ago, it was only, the house was studios only, not shop, but studios. And this is pictures from these studios 150 years ago.
Basically, we are now in the first floor where we sell the newest cameras, the newest hits, where we have the specialists whose hobby is photography and who are also selling or working at our store and selling cameras. Here we have cameras that hold their value. You probably, if you buy a Leica 50 years ago, it's still working. So it's a camera that works for so many years.
It's like a classic car.
Yeah, it's like a classic car.
You have it next to diamonds, so it's a good parallel for that.
It was the founder of this house, 1851. It was Langhans.
In 1851 to 1928, he was the leading figure in Czech photography in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In autumn 1998, while the house was being prepared for remodeling, a large part of the gallery of eminent people, the most valuable part of the archive, was discovered. Boxes of glass negatives had been locked in a cupboard located on this very spot. So there was a point historically where the Czech Republic was the most important place for photographers.
Yes.
So if people came here, that means that a lot of photographers lived here because this was a very big business. Because at the time, not many people...
At this time, it was really big business, yeah.
This is not something that you see all over the world. Usually shops are created, stores are created, they're just brick and mortar stores. They don't have a foundation of this amount of legacy in photography. So this is actually kind of wonderful.
I consider Skoda a must-visit destination for photographers from all over Europe, especially if you happen to be in Prague. It's a pleasure to be there, even if you're not planning on buying anything. Another iconic must-see location is the Gothic Charles Bridge. Named after Charles IV, it was made pedestrian only after World War II, and boy are there a lot of pedestrians.
Obviously, shooting the bridge at sunrise is the best case scenario. Sun rising behind the tower, no people. So for the afternoon, the best spot is from the tower because you can get the other perspective with the sun once again setting in frame. A few things to keep in mind. 1, bring cash because there's an entrance fee. And 2, minimize what you bring. And that's going to become very apparent once we get up there. They do allow tripods up here, but there's not a lot of space. When I said that I didn't bring a tripod with me, or as it seems like I didn't, kind of lied a little bit. You can see a full-size tripod here would take up too much space. and it's really tough just to move through here. So if I set up a tripod, even if I had it minimized, it would still come out to about the middle of this walkway, which means that anybody walking by could potentially trip over it. So what I can actually do is set up one of these right here with my camera, arguably more stable because this is actually stone, where this is wobbly and wood, and I don't take up any space. I'm making sure that I have 2 legs facing me and 1 facing forward. And the reason is the lens is quite heavy on the front, so I want to make sure that this leg compensates, holds the weight of this lens. If I twisted this around this way, then this has a tendency to potentially pitch forward if somebody pushes it. In the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because we're about, I guess about an hour before sunset, this area is going to get really busy. I'm actually here for after sunset for the blue hour, so it's going to get quiet again. Really, it's a balance here with this composition because there's so much negative space on the water. I can't center the bridge in the composition because the castle's really important. The castle's off to the right, but I think that's okay. I fear going too wide. I also know that these little ramps that they set up on the left side of the bridge, those all have lights on them, and at night they look really cool. I think we've achieved maximum busyness up here.
As the sun began to set, every single viewing platform on the tower began to fill with people. But I held down the fort and was rewarded with an epic blue hour shot. Using a longer exposure, I was able to blur the moving people on the bridge and make them a little bit less distracting in the shot. This is what the Charles Bridge looks like at sunset.
And this is what it looks like before sunrise.
Waking up at 4 in the morning is never fun, but it's worth it because you're often rewarded with a sleepy city, free of people and free of distractions. It's just you, the architecture, and sometimes your own personal film crew.
What I'm actually looking for is first 2 interesting statues, and I'm trying to position the statues by backing up. They kind of move in like this, and then I have the dome, I have the tower, and I'm trying to create a unique composition that way. Because what I can actually do is, even though I'm far away from it, I can zoom in. And this looks pretty good because I think if I move further back, I'm actually gonna kind of compress all those spires together. So now I see the statue, the domes, the spires in the background, this nice tower, and the statue on the right. I wanna make sure I catch the colors of the clouds. And most importantly, these lamp lights are on. And these lamp lights are gonna turn off probably 30 minutes before sunrise. And I want to capture the blue hour. There's a nice blue sky, soft color in the clouds, and of course the artificial lights. Now it's just about positioning. I think the instinct when you first start shooting places like this is to go all the way to the end of the bridge and shoot wide. But in this situation, I don't have a lot going on in the sky above the architecture. So what I'm actually doing is framing the architecture and zooming in. So what I can do is make the bridge look like it's much longer by compressing it all together, and I don't have to go all the way to the back of the bridge to do that. The other thing is I'm only halfway down the bridge, which means I only have to deal with people setting up on this half of the bridge. If I go all the way to the end, everybody else is gonna set up, and I'm gonna have a bunch of photographers in my shot. So I can get the same effect halfway and probably have to do half of the work in post-processing, which is pretty nice as well. You might have noticed that I'm also staying in the same position. That's because I've already set my composition and I know these lights are gonna turn off, but the sun's gonna rise maybe like 40 minutes after, which means that the sky has more potential to light up after as well. So if I leave my camera in the same spot, I have the ability to take a shot now during blue hour and blend it together with a better version of the sky. Or in this case, more ambient light, because we also don't have any light on any of the towers or spires. So if I set this up and leave it in the same position, it gives me greater flexibility in post-processing to be able to blend different frames together. If I were to move the camera back in perspective and shoot different shots, it would be very difficult or even impossible to put those frames back together again.
I blended an early photo with the lamplight still on with another photo from the sunrise after the lights turned off to create this, a dynamic morning shot.
What a pretty sunrise. Beautiful morning. Well worth the early wake-up call. And I always find that it's easier to get up at 4 a.m. when you know you can come back and take a nap after you're done.
After that much-needed nap, we headed over to my friend Erik Johansson's studio. While I may often use time-blending techniques in my images, like the morning shot from Charles Bridge, Erik uses techniques ranging from anything to everything. His photos are so phenomenal that they're out of this world, sometimes quite literally.
So it's like a fairly small space, more like a place where I do retouching and I can do some smaller shoots and stuff, but mainly I sit here and sketch, and I sit here when I put together all the material that I shot. And it's not always things that I will actually do, it's more a mix of some things that something I just thought about. Maybe in the morning I just have an idea and I try to just sketch it down. I was actually just about to do that before you came here, because I thought about almost like a conductor, but he's like conducting the weather somehow, like, you know, on the top of a mountain or something and creating something. I think the part of the process I like the most is right after I photograph everything, because that's the first time that I actually can see what will probably kind of look like. Maybe even like the first mock-up I do in the computer. But these days I try to create as much as possible on location. So even if it is quite like surrealistic ideas, I usually try to find a way to capture as much as possible of that on the scene. So usually already when I take pictures I can see what it will become. I think the hardest part is almost to get started on something. At the same time, I think it's a balance between getting started, not too fast, but also finding like enough time for it to grow, kind of.
Oh yeah. Well, can you explain like this idea and this concept here? Because I noticed that this is a giant metal set of tweezers.
I had this made by a blacksmith here in Prague. So
it's pretty awesome.
It's solid aluminium. It's a bit heavier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's a little heavier.
Yeah, it was basically just like I was looking at different smaller ones just to see like some kind of model that could be scaled up in a good way, and it was not really possible to just scale up a small one, but actually do like a new design of it that would still kind of look like a big one. I have all these weird ideas about creating impossible places and stuff, but I think it's a lot about also trying to create something that people can relate to, and that's often like using everyday objects or things that people can recognize, not like just sci-fi things.
I like the description you had in your TED Talk where you're talking sort of like an Escher-like way that you can have three geometric objects that are all normal for somebody, but as soon as you put them together in an abnormal way, it's relatable but impossible. So it kind of tricks the brain, because here, I love this with the tweezers, I'm like, I know everybody's used tweezers, right? And like this image, we can understand he's hanging up a canvas, but the fact that he's transforming a scene is where you're like, this is something more than what it seems.
I found this like really cool formations, and it just gave me the idea of what if somehow like how can these be holding themselves up? Started thinking about structures and things, and I guess I just thought about an arch, and I just thought this place could actually work quite well for that. So I shot a lot of places, a lot of different shapes of this. So I basically cut out one cliff, the other one. Then I kind of had a rough idea of where I wanted to put the houses. I used a program called SketchUp. It's not something that is visible in the final composition. It's just more like an aid for me to know where things should be placed perspective-wise. So basically it's just like a program like this. You draw cubes and shapes and stuff.
And you can extrude them.
And you can also kind of like calculate the distance where you want the camera to be placed here, and then you can measure the distance just to make sure that you get it right and all. And this is very helpful for placing things in perspective, basically. Like I just did one house, and it also had to be a little bit cone-shaped.
Because they have to fit together like a real arch.
Exactly. So I got like a rough representation of what the perspective would be. And then what I could basically do was just to take each of these, and I kind of knew like, so this house I have to shoot from kind of above. So if you kind of think about it, it's actually more or less that it has to be shot like this, right? This house would have to be shot from below, basically.
A lower angle, yeah.
I went out with a sketch like this. I just separated them, and then what I just did was to go out in Stockholm and in Prague, shooting different buildings, like trying to find those houses in the right perspective, trying to shoot a lot more than I need, and then just go through it in post just to see which ones will work well in the perspective and which ones look nice visually. So in order to shape it in the right way, I took the front of the house, I took the side of the house, and tried to shape them independently. I just had that as a reference all the time, so kind of like know, okay, so there, this will be there, this will be there, just to kind of know around about how much would you see of that shape there. You have an idea, and then it requires a certain amount of problem solving to kind of figure out how can you get as close to this to make it as realistic as possible. And sometimes that means doing some using like this SketchUp just to see what a realistic perspective would look like.
So do you find it frustrating then when a lot of people say, oh, well, it's just Photoshop, you can do whatever you want?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a common thing.
Yeah, people don't understand the amount of work.
And that's one of the reasons why I am also doing these behind the scenes videos. And it's a way for me to show the amount of work behind it. I mean, it's essentially 3 parts of the process, and that would be idea planning, which really takes the longest in a way. Shooting it, which is fairly straightforward if you plan it well, and putting it together is actually also fairly straightforward if you shot it well. In the end, it really comes down to planning, and I think that's something that a lot of people miss. They just think that you just take pictures, and if you're really good in Photoshop, you can fix anything. We're living in a world where everything needs to be explained somehow, and I just think it's like a silly, funny idea. So it's like a childish part of me that love doing these images too. So.
Oh, and I love it. I think that's why so many people love it too, because it doesn't take them out of reality, but it takes them out of the sense of the way the world is now. There's all these things to worry about, but then this is very childish. It takes them back to their childhood or something that's a little bit more. They can't explain it. It's not real, but it feels good.
Right. Exactly.
What if we lived in a world where we could do this? Awesome. Well, thanks for inviting us into the studio.
Thank you for coming. It was great.
Yeah.
As a travel and landscape photographer, I always enjoy learning from other styles of photography as well. And I hope you learned something from Erik too. And maybe his work will even inspire you on your next project. Now, it's time to go visit our final location in Prague.
Another day, and it's time to shoot another tower. And this time, it's gonna be sunset, which is great because it means I don't have to get up silly early like I did on the bridge. I'm going to be shooting Powder Tower, which is not as well known as the Old Town Square Clock Tower or the Charles Bridge Tower, so I don't anticipate it being busy at all. This is about, I don't know, 8 minutes from Old Town Square, and nobody ever really goes up here, but I think it's one of the best views in Prague.
Another tower, another steep, windy staircase.
That's no joke. I'm a little claustrophobic, but this isn't so bad. Like, it's enough space and light. What did you do today? Oh, you know, just fell off a big tower in Prague. How'd that work out? Oh, not so good. This tower is much better. Well, I mean, in terms of areas to set up and room for people, a Y-shaped intersection and leading into the cathedral, the tower, and the castle in the background, and there's some nice towers here. So panoramic works really well, or something really tight. What I usually do if I have a situation where I want to take 2 shots, I'll take the high-res camera, in this case the 50 megapixel camera, and I'll shoot wide. And then if I have another camera that's a lower megapixel, I'll zoom in so that I can maximize everything in frame. So the nice thing is, since I am shooting wide with a higher resolution camera, it gives me the ability to crop in a little bit if I need to and not lose too much resolution. And the other thing that's really nice is, since I've set these up, I'm going to leave them in place. And if everything looks great in either one, it also will give me the ability to blend different elements. So part of the sunset with the blue hour, because I didn't move it. If I had one camera and I wanted the 2 shots, I'd have to continuously move everything, so there'd be no way to blend different moments in time together with a single camera. That's why I'm usually traveling with 2 cameras, so I can have 2 different compositions, because the variable is always the weather. Right now, it could do something amazing, or it could be a dud. If it's a dud, I have a nice crop version with very little sky. If it's awesome, I have a wider version with plenty of sky. We're currently being illuminated by really obnoxious floodlights. So in the photo, what happens is this. Camera stayed in the same place, so what I can do is cover the lights so they don't do anything to the frame, because all I'm trying to do is capture the cathedral lights. So I basically can just use a few frames to put it all back together.
Which photo is your favorite, the wide shot or the zoomed version? Let me know in the comments. And as for me, next week's episode will be from La Città Eterna, Rome, the Eternal City. Ci vediamo la prossima settimana.
That's what photography is, standing for 4 hours instead of just enjoying something for 4 minutes.
Why didn't we name the show Standing for 4 Hours?
Standing in one place for hours. We named it Moments in Time because there's so many moments and amazing moments in time. But the reality is we're standing around a lot.